If you work in the United Kingdom, every month a portion of your salary is taken away from you before you even see it, in the form of national insurance contributions. These deductions go towards your retirement, so that decades from now, when you stop working, the state can pay you back in the form of a pension that will keep you financially comfortable into your old age. At least, that's what you're told. But in actual fact, that's all one big lie. Money collected from the workers of today will not be invested. It will not be saved. It will not be ring-fenced in an account with your name on it. By the end of the week, it will have disappeared, having been paid out to today's pensioners, people who are right now collecting benefits that were promised to them by a government that took their money decades ago. In a remarkable admission from one of the architects of the welfare state himself, Aneurin Bevan said, "The great secret about the National Insurance Fund is that there ain't no fund." So, how does the government get away with this? And is it sustainable enough to provide for your future? As an accountant used to handling budgets of 100 million and more, I'm here to help you understand why your state pension might actually be a Ponzi scheme. In January 1920, a man called Carlo Pietro Giovanni Guglielmo Tebaldo Ponzi, thank goodness for teleprompters, or Charles Ponzi for short, set up shop in Boston under the name of the Securities Exchange Company and promised his investors a remarkable 100% profit within 90 days. The claim was that Ponzi was buying international postal reply coupons in Europe, where they were cheap, and redeeming them for stamps in America, where they were worth more. In theory, this type of arbitrage could work, but in practice the logistics were impossible. For the first 18 investors alone, Ponzi would have needed over 50,000 postal coupons. This didn't matter in the slightest to Charles, because he never bought a single postal coupon. He never needed to. Instead, the money coming in from new investors was being used to pay the returns promised to earlier ones. The 18 people who signed up in January 1920 received their promised returns, not from arbitrage, but from the next wave of investors who joined in February. Those February investors were paid with money from March, and so on. By July, Ponzi was taking in nearly $1 million a day. He bought a mansion in Lexington, he acquired a controlling interest in a bank, he became a celebrity. And that's when the entire scheme collapsed. In a single week, investors lost nearly $20 million, equivalent to almost $250 million today. Charles had slipped up. The volume of investors demanding their money back from prior months totaled more than the new money coming in. And with no actual business operations or assets to underpin the scheme, he had nowhere near enough to pay them. Sadly, although Ponzi himself came a cropper over 100 years ago, the eponymous scheme still exists today, and they typically share 4 defining features. First, they promise returns that are guaranteed, generous, and reliable. Second, unbeknownst to the investor, those returns are not generated by real economic activity. Third, earlier participants are paid back using money taken from later participants. And fourth, the scheme therefore requires a continuous supply of new entrants in order to survive. Now, hold that definition in your mind, and then consider the UK state pension. In 1948, Parliament announced the creation of the modern welfare state. National insurance was pitched to the British public as a contribution system. You pay in during your working years and you receive back in retirement. It was framed as insurance, as savings. As mentioned before, when speaking behind closed doors, Bevan admitted it was none of these things. Your national insurance contributions, which are compulsory and should therefore really be called deductions, are paid directly into the Consolidated Fund, which is the general revenue pot of His Majesty's Treasury. From there, they are paid out that same month to current pensioners. This is technically called a pay-as-you-go system. In reality, it's an unfunded liability. Now, let's run the test. The state pension promises guaranteed returns, which are not generated by economic activity, such as the growth of an investment portfolio. Earlier participants, those who are now pensioners, will be paid with the money deducted from the salary of current workers, or later participants, and as a result, it requires a continuous supply of new entrants, because without those current workers paying national insurance, the entire scheme would collapse. All 4 features matching exactly. If a private company operated this structure, its directors would be in prison. But when the government operates it, we call it a pension? For most of the 20th century, the Ponzi structure of the UK state pension was hidden by a demographic gift. Britain was a young country. There were many workers and relatively few pensioners. The inflows easily covered the outflows. In the 1950s, there were roughly 5 working-age adults for every person over state pension age. The pyramid was intact. The scheme functioned. Today, that ratio has collapsed. For every British pensioner, there are now roughly 3 working-age adults paying in. And by 2050, the Office for Budget Responsibility projects the ratio will fall further still, with there being 25% more pensioners than there are today. When the pension was introduced, the expected years in retirement were much lower. The system was never designed to pay people for 2 or 3 decades. It was designed to pay people for a handful of final years. The base of the pyramid is shrinking, and the top's growing. The promise being made is getting more and more expensive. And then there's the triple lock, which guarantees that the state pension rises each year by whichever is highest of CPI inflation, average earnings growth, or a figure of 2.5%. It was sold as a modest protection, but the OBR now estimates the triple lock will cost £15.5 billion a year by 2030. Nearly 3 times the original forecast. And the OBR's latest fiscal risks report concluded if the current state pension policy settings are maintained, debt would be on an unsustainable path. That's the independent watchdog of the British government telling you plainly that the scheme cannot continue as it is. So the demographic crisis is already baked in. The population is ageing, whether we like it or not. But there's a second threat that is newer, less visible, and potentially far more destructive. Every pound paid out in state pension depends on a pound coming in from a working age employee. The Ponzi only works while the workers exist and earn taxable income. What happens to the pension pyramid when the current workers are replaced by machines that don't draw a salary and therefore don't contribute a penny to the consolidated fund? This is no longer a hypothetical. Across 2025 and 26, businesses have announced tens of thousands of job cuts that they claim are directly attributed to automation and AI systems. Every lost job is also a lost national insurance contribution. Robots in warehouses, AI, customer service chatbots, and generative models do not pay NI contributions. The productivity gains go to the shareholders, while the tax base goes to zero. The pension Ponzi was already struggling with supporting an ageing population. AI now threatens to hollow out the working base that remains. And you don't need every job to be replaced. You only need enough to fall below the threshold at which these inflows can cover outflows. And we're already close to that threshold today, before AI has truly hit full stride. There are, broadly, only 4 ways the government can respond. It can raise taxes on the remaining workers, squeezing a shrinking base ever harder. It can reduce the pension itself by cutting it, means testing it, or scrapping the triple lock. It can push back the state pension age, forcing people to work for longer before they receive anything back, which is almost guaranteed to happen again soon. Or it can borrow to cover the shortfall, adding to a national debt that's already around 100% of GDP. None of these are popular. Some are politically impossible, and all of them end the same way for you. Less pension, later in life, and with more uncertainty. Now, you can't leave the national insurance system. The contributions are compulsory, but you can build a parallel retirement plan that doesn't depend on the Ponzi. Whilst none of this should be taken as financial advice, things that I would consider include 1. Workplace pensions. If an employer offers a workplace pension, contributing the maximum they will match effectively grants the employee free money. Unlike national insurance, this money is ring-fenced in the employee's name, invested in real assets, and can't be raided by the government to pay for someone else's retirement. 2. Self-invested personal pension. A SIP allows an individual to take control of their own retirement savings, investing directly into their choice of stocks, funds, and other assets. Contributions receive tax relief at the relevant marginal rate, meaning the government effectively tops up the pension to repay tax that will have been deducted when that money was earned. 3. Individual savings accounts. Every UK adult can save up to £20,000 per year in an ISA, with all capital gains and withdrawals from this account being tax-free for life. By investing in low-cost index funds and allowing these to compound over decades, I hope to generate a retirement pot that dwarfs anything the state could possibly ever provide. 4. AI-proof income. The workers most at risk from AI are those doing predictable, rule-based tasks, like me in my early days working in accountancy. Whilst I now operate at a more strategic level, I still need to invest in skills that will remain valuable in an AI economy, as well as learning to incorporate it into my own workflows so that I'm moving with the tide and not against it. 5. Own real assets. Property, gold, and shares in productive companies are tangible assets, with the potential to either generate income or appreciate in value, regardless of what happens to national insurance receipts. If you want to know how to spot opportunities to build a revenue-generating business of your own, you need to watch this video now.